On a second. Scott, how are you? Which part of the world are you in?
I am in San Francisco.
That's excellent. So I've known you for 23 years now. I was just checking. That is the first time we connected on LinkedIn. I was 2 years old at that time, so I'm 25. No, you were about a year and a half old, so we're 24, 24, 25. That's pretty good age to know each other.
Exactly. I was a young whippersnapper then.
You still are. You still are. It's good to connect again. So tell me a little bit about just what have you been doing in LastPass, and also you working in AI for quite a bit of time. Walk us through your career arc.
Yeah. Because I'm only 2 years, I was 2 years old when I met you. It's funny. In the '90s, I was working at American Express, and a company called Silicon Graphics contacted me, and they said they wanted to build something called the electronic channel. And I said, okay, that's fine. And the reason they were interested in me is because I had done a lot what people call database marketing, which has kind of evolved into CRM stuff. So on a whim, I flew to California, started working for them, and really the electronic channel was the internet. And they were working on some of the first browsers. At the time, they were doing customer support and some marketing via email, internet email. So that's where it all started. And then, I continued in the digital space. I worked in the community where you and I met when I was at Intuit, started their community, which at the time was, Wall Street Journal said it was one of the top online communities. And but then I realized that people in community, I call another glass ceiling, kind of hit a glass ceiling in terms of where they can go in their careers. There's
Mm.
very few chief customer officers, very few CMOs who have community in their DNA. And they usually hire somebody to learn it. So I quickly pivoted to what is, we call digital scale, digital self-serve, and focusing on the pre-sale and post-sale side of the business. Um, it was good because it expanded beyond community. It also, there's the pre-sale side where you're tied to revenue, and then the post-sale side where you're trying to save money. And I did that at Google, did that at Adobe, Coursera, Clary, and now I'm at LastPass.
And in the
Um,
middle, you went to HubSpot and you were managing community there as well, aren't
yes, I
you?
was at I was at HubSpot managing community and customer engagement. Yeah, there's quite a few. I think, and hopefully this doesn't sound egocentric. I think out of the top five software companies in the country, I probably have consulted or worked for all of them, maybe the top 10. So,
That's awesome, man. That's a great story. Tell me about LastPass. I mean, a lot of people do know LastPass.
yeah.
Many people actually, the way I got to know LastPass was my cousin, who was about 56 at the time, unfortunately, about 5 years ago, passed away, and he had put everything together in LastPass, made sure his wife was okay. That was the first time I even knew that he had done a good job of making sure he do make sure that his kids and everybody else were going to be okay with all the access that they needed. But let's talk a little bit about LastPass. How are you guys actually looking at this digital in particular, and talk to me about how you're using AI?
Yeah. So digital first is a really important thing for us, just like a lot of companies. Helping, I think a good way to think about it is the funnel is getting shorter and shorter, or people are going through it faster and faster because of digital, but also because of AI. And so, we're looking at AI in terms of, how can we get information to our customers at their point of need? So, what does that really mean? So, part of it is on our own site, whether we have our own AI chatbot, or whether involves working with an LLM or Google AI overview, right? So every day Google highlights AI more and more. Google has 90 some percent of the marketplace, and so it's really trying to figure out how you can be more visible on those platforms. And I think a lot of companies are focused on that, but it really comes down to the type of content you're creating and the content you're
Mm,
optimizing. So that's kind of one bucket. The second bucket is, AI, what we're doing on our own platforms and things like that. And, we were talking previously, a lot of companies are jumping in head first, which is, not, maybe that's the right thing, maybe not. But I think in our space, it's really important to figure out like how you get alignment cross functionally. How do you think about the data that's being consumed by these LLMs? How do you think about where that data and how it's going to be used and where it's going to be represented. And so we're really spending a lot of time thinking that through.
Yeah. Let's talk through one portion at a time. First, how do you make sure that Google, ChatGPT, Perplexity, you show up? What do you think has changed SEO versus this new way of doing? Obviously, the questions have gotten larger, and these generative AI LLMs seem to be optimizing or giving more weight to certain set of resources, be albeit they be not the most trustworthy resources or whatever the case might be. And there's a certain type of mid-funnel content they seem to like more than anything else because the top of the funnel content, they're just providing it on their own for free. What are you seeing in that your content that you're producing and you're creating has changed from what it was before, maybe
Yeah,
before LLM.
I think we're building on what was there before. So SEO is kind of one of the foundation or key foundational blocks. But we also look at it through the lens of the three C's, which is content, community, and citations. Right. So the content you create and how can you optimize that content, and that can be the structure of the content on one of your web pages. The community part, I mean, we know about user generated content, but there's community in terms of what's on your own platform, owned platform, your own platform. And then there's community in terms of non-owned platforms such as Reddit, et cetera. And I'll get back to Reddit. And then the third thing is the citations of where your company's being cited on other places on the internet, whether it's G2, whether it's Wikipedia or Reddit as well. Now it's interesting because like minnows to bread, everybody now is thinking about Reddit because all these articles have popped up saying Reddit is really key and Reddit's paying $60 million to Google. Um, what's interesting is that the number of the sources, the degree of which ChatGPT, for example, is using Reddit has decreased the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Uh, right. And so, some thoughts there. One is like, did they change their algorithm? Um, and maybe they did because everybody's like thinking about, just like with SEO. Yeah, I talked about how I worked on the internet, when they had the first browsers. I actually, just a side story here, when I worked at AOL and Web Crawler, which was the top search engine at the time,
Yeah.
and we created the first ad on the internet. Wired magazine thinks they did. We think we did. But the long story short is when we were working on the search then, a lot of the things we're talking about today are things we were talking about then in terms of algorithms changing and the impact it can have. So one
Mm.
last thing is, Google also is testing out right now, having users pick their preferred sources. So, that has a lot of interesting implications as well. You and I, let's just be presumptuous here and say we're more sophisticated than the average searcher. And if we are, we're probably going to pick our own source. But then there are the other folks who are not going to pick their source. And so in that case, what is Google going to do? And I think that, one of the things is they'll probably, leverage the sources that people pick and prioritize that way, unless there's like some other indicator, like, Scott goes to sporting goods sites all the time. So therefore we want to have, sporting sites being a source.
That's interesting. If you play it out, let's say 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the LLM actually knows enough about me and the sources that I trust, given that there are other sources as well, to try and make a customized view of ranking the sources and the data and the information from those more than others, right? I would imagine. So, for example, I see lots of useless articles on Fortune magazine on stuff that has got nothing related to the stuff that I want because somebody went in there and wrote a free piece, right? They're called these contributors, Fortune contributors. And
Mm-hmm.
most of their pieces are useless. I don't know how Fortune goes through and figures out whether someone is good or not. But I would rather, if I wanted to learn something about a specific thing, if there's a specific set of sources that I trust, I would rather go over that. I'm hoping it gets to the point where it's not a one size fits all, where it is right now, which is everybody has the same set of citations, where increasingly I'm going to say, here are the sources I trust. So go get me more information from here versus there.
Yeah, if you go to a Google News, for example, you can pick
Yeah,
your choices,
correct.
your sources, and so I think it's going to evolve that
That should
way.
go to search, correct.
Go to search, yeah. So I think all these things, going back to your original question, I think, with my team here, I really try and think about that framework of, content, community, and citations, and figuring out which ones you're gonna, focus on first. You can't take all this, all the places, all the sources and say, or all the third party sites and say, I want to be on them all. So you need to be kind of strategic and figure out which ones you want to be on.
Tell me something about vibe coding. Are you guys using it? How do you think about it? I know that you had mentioned just before we started
Yeah.
recording about governance, control, making sure that you're thoughtful about letting people have access to a lot of LLM, not just vibe coding. But let's talk a little bit about vibe coding. It's become hot now, and everybody in the uncle. I don't think there's a single day that goes by when I don't hear of a new vibe coding app thing. Are you guys starting to allow your teams to do it, use it? I'm assuming, but I want to know more about your thought
Yeah.
process now.
I can't speak for the development team or the engineers, but in general, we're not doing that right now, unless somebody's doing it on their own outside the company. For all these things, maybe myself, maybe you did the same thing. Is I always wanted to be the first one to do something, and I think in this case right now, maybe it's because I have a gray hair. It's better not to be first, right? Because there's just things are changing rapidly. And I mean, if you have a startup, obviously first to market's key. But in a company like ours, it's better to kind of learn from what others are doing, and their mistakes and their what they do well. So yeah, we're doing very, if the development team might be doing vibe coding, I'm doing some on my own. But in terms of the company, not very much.
I do hear a lot of people that are adopting vibe coding right now as service providers. So whether you're an agency, remember the marketing agencies of
Yeah,
2000 and so on, they've now realized that they can become agency developers themselves instead of then white labeling somebody else's development or outsourcing it. And they're starting to use a lot of that. A lot of IT service providers who would previously build prototypes and take maybe a couple of weeks, maybe days, or maybe even longer, months to build a prototype are now doing it in hours, if not a
yeah,
day or a couple of days. So it's the people that are using it for most of the time. It falls into three buckets, is what I've seen. The use and throw prototype. Hey, I want to show the customer what it might look like. So I got to build something. Most likely, I'm going to throw it away, but it's a good visual way to represent as opposed to showing PowerPoint. That's one. The second one is essentially simple apps that people use for themselves. The only question there being, if you're a CIO and a bunch of people are connecting to your data, collecting data into their vibe coded
yeah.
app, and now that's available, it opens up a whole bunch of can of worms, I think, more than anything else.
That's why we don't do it. Yeah,
And then the third bucket that I'm seeing a lot of people do it is completely standalone, no data required, which is very few. If you're a landing page, you're
yeah,
building a microsite or something like that, and people are like, oh, I've got to launch this new thing. I'm going to build it as a standalone thing. The only problem is that those usually take a life of their own. There's one of two options. It dies within 3, 6 months. So it's a short lifespan, which goes back into bucket number one, which
yeah,
is use and throw. The second one is just these apps, once they take their life of their own, 10% of them actually will live for a longer period of time. And now you've got this little island away from the rest of the mainland. And most of the people don't have any clue how to take that and move it safely here because this is built on a stack. That's built on
yeah.
a completely vibe coded stack, completely different, older, newer, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense for agencies, right? Because they're an hourly business, right? They're paying for how many hours somebody works on something. I can tell you in terms of like my own projects, I'm very interested in sports analytics, and so I've dabbled in terms of building some tools to help me, analyze certain baseball teams and things like that. But yeah, I think let's see how the market evolves there. It's probably not like a great analogy, but if you and I spoke a year ago, we'd be talking about W3, Web3, we'd be talking about some other things that kind of
Bitcoin,
fade.
crypto,
Yeah, that kind of fade. NFTs.
DeFi.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's uncharacteristic of me, but this is one of the few times where I think I do see the benefits of how we're approaching of just move slowly, see what others are doing, and you don't want employees to go rogue. It's not like the old Survey Monkey approach where all the employees started using Survey Monkey, and then you got the business account or the enterprise account. You don't want all the employees to start doing taking company data and doing vibe coding.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the three C's again and how you're using in AI them, AI and all of them. Sorry, that's what I meant. So content. Let's start with content. Content community, and then we worry about citations. Are you
Yeah.
using AI for a lot of content, either creation or boosting the process, or where in the process does it fit and what does it do?
Yeah. So we're doing it not as much as you would think. Definitely used it more in previous jobs in terms of, using it. So one way we could use it, for example, is take content that we wrote and then summarize it or translate it. So that's one way. Um, but we're not ahead of the curve here or the adoption curve, and that's kind of a conscious decision. Um, but when I talk about content, it's really so there's that part, the content creation, but I'm really talking about what's on the page, what's in the HTML in terms of LLMs being able to detect it, being able
Mm,
to crawl it, because that's really key. And I just finished 3 or 4 external presentations talking about how you need to really rethink your content. If you go to a blog on Intuit, or you go to a blog on, or a knowledge base article on, HubSpot or whatever, there's lots of things they can do to improve their content so it's more findable or crawlable. And it's not to say that we're perfect either, but that's what we're trying to address.
yeah. So you don't use content, you don't use AI for creating content. By the way, AI slop is a thing.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
yep.
a ton of it all over the place, but especially on LinkedIn and places like that. So
Yeah.
you will see.
One thing I would say, when I do use the AI to create content or to do analysis, I always use two or more LLMs, right? Because
You
I want,
chain it, or do you use one to reference the other, or do you use one and then you use reference and then you check which one's better?
I check the differences between them, so
Got
we
it.
can, so that, yeah, there's the accuracy number, but I'm also, what's, ChatGPT might hallucinate or have some data that I don't know is inaccurate right away, because I'm not smart enough to figure it out. So then I'll put it in Claude, or, or Copilot or something else, or Gemini. And then to me, that's a red flag if I see there's a discrepancy, right? So it's almost like a fact. It's a thought partner. It's a fact checker.
Yeah. No, I think there's a big market just for vibe testing and vibe,
Yes.
uh, the ability to check and verify and quality assure. I think overall, just because everybody realizes that hallucination is real, it's not getting any better. Supposedly, it got better from GPT-4 to 5. I don't see it that much different, but that may be just me. Let's talk about the second one, community. Are you using AI in community at all?
Not yet. We are looking at, so we're in the process of looking at a new community platform, but a lot of the community main platforms are using it in a number of ways. They all have AI search right now, or a lot of them do. They use it for sentiment analysis. They're also using it to, when somebody types in a question, instead of showing links to related answers, they're using AI to summarize it. Um, they're using AI also, or agents, to, um, when somebody has a question, and say it's a more support oriented site, to then send that question to an agent, or to Salesforce, and then to an agent.
Yeah.
So these are all the different ways that we're looking at using it. One of the things that I've been focused on since I joined LastPass is really thinking about how do we revamp a lot of our platforms. So this is definitely something that I'm looking at. Um, and then, yeah, so those are kind of like the main use cases.
And when it comes to citations, I don't think you
Yeah.
guys are using citations in AI in any way, right? Or are you checking or something like that?
You're,
Are you using something like a Profound or Bear or any of the others?
yeah. So I was just going to, one more thing on the community. So
Yeah.
one thing we are doing is looking at, um, using tools to analyze uh, common themes, words, phrases that customers use on community, on via search, via cases, right? So that's like a perfect use case for AI. In terms of citations, so yeah, so I've used Profoundly, but it was a little expensive for me. So we use XFunnel has a tool,
Hmm.
Otterly.ai, just being I'm an advisor to them, so I've been using their product as well, which I like a lot. Um, but as you know, if you're on LinkedIn, every day there's like a new company saying they're an expert and they have a tool for AEO, GEO, all that stuff. But again, I would recommend using multiple tools because some of the information that it's, if you do analysis on a URL or, an article, it's not always going to be accurate. It might say you're missing, H1 or whatever, and then you know that you've used that. So my 2 cents for everybody is pay pay a little bit extra and get 2 or 3 tools so you can compare the results.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely true, just in terms of, um, I know the older people on the block, like Ahrefs, and they all have something there. And
Yeah.
the new kids on the block claim that the older tools are just not good. I've seen enough of these to know that all of them have pluses and minuses. And at the end of the day, you're not going to get something that gives you each and every one of them easy.
Yeah, and there's also the delta. Like some of these tools are expensive, and I'm a cheap guy. Don't worry, I'm not cheap with my family, but so if a tool that you're paying, 50 to $150 can get you 70% there, then I think that, it might be better to pay for 2 tools than paying, a
One
thousand
for a lot.
dollars.
Yeah, a lot for one. Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. Um, I know that a couple of people have been going through and helping their companies go through from the folks at the bottom. They've been doing what they call workshops. So I have a friend, and she does workshops for Vibe everything, Vibe coding, Vibe product
Yeah,
management, Vibe product development. And there's a thesis that when you and I started, it was a waterfall approach to product development and software development.
yeah,
Then it became agile was the thing, and her thesis and a lot of other people's thesis who seem to agree with her is that agile is going to move and change a lot with the vibe world. Whether it becomes fast, no, agile was more of a loop as opposed to
yeah,
step after step. This one's going to be smaller loops, but many more loops. So instead of one big loop, you're going to have one loop and another loop and another loop and just keep going that way. Um, have you thought about that at all, as to whether, with
yeah.
the fact that now you don't need to write product requirements documents that are 40 pages long, that you might need to change your development process from agile and sprints to something else?
Yeah, no, I thought a lot about that. I think it's going to be similar to how, growth marketing folks think in terms of like, quick experiments, learn from it. I think it will accelerate. I will say, you know, you have a lot of startup DNA in you. I have a lot of like big enterprise DNA in me. I know you worked at Microsoft as well, but for the big enterprises, it's going to take a while because the key decision makers are still kind of in the traditional mindset. Let's do a lot of analysis. Let's do, extensive PRDs, things like that. And I think for anybody that's starting early in their career, I would really try and find a mentor or a company that is more, I was going to say more agile. That's not the right word, but it is embracing some of these newer ways, and is also jumping into AI more because if you don't get up to speed on this, it's going to be a detriment to your own career. And so when I work with mentor other folks, I'm constantly telling them that is, find people who are doing this, you know, cut a deal with them. If you can't do it in the company, cut a deal with these guys and figure out how you can learn it because yes, AI is, taking away jobs and all this stuff, but I think there's a bigger issue, which is, you got to invest in your own AI because the companies are not doing it. I think
And
we
I
have,
think when I talk to more and more companies, there are parts of many jobs that are going to go away. Maybe not the whole job goes away.
yeah,
As an example, so eventually jobs will go away because of AI. But what they're seeing right now is, let's say you're a product manager, as an example, and
hmm,
I'm just making it up, 50 things to do. And out of those 50 things, there are some things that AI just will not be able to do for the quite a foreseeable future. But now, instead of you doing those 50 things, a lot of automation can be taken care of the 30 things that you do, like competitor analysis, like
yeah,
analyzing all the support call requests, like analyzing and prioritizing which so the priority part you do, but the analysis part, AI can start to do, maybe not perfectly, but it'll start to do it better and better over time.
yeah,
Right. So instead of you having to go through every sales call, having to go through every customer service call, analyzing and figuring out what are the deep patterns, AI can do that for you fairly well. So that's a
yeah,
task that previously you would have had a product manager do on his list of 50 or her list of 50 tasks. Now she's got only 20. But because she can do 20, she can do three products instead of one. That will now require you to only have one product manager instead of three. So that's the way to think about it. A lot of tasks, which previously I thought required a lot of haste,
Yeah.
is easily automated. Is
Yeah.
easily automated, right? I was working with Amazon. I think I told you, right? I worked with HP, Cisco, Amazon. So I've
Yeah.
got a lot of friends in those places and colleagues who work with me there. They are shocked at how good their co-pilots and AI things are working. They're just shocked. They're like, my God, I thought this would take 3, 4 years to get done. 3 months later, the new Sonnet 4 from Claude is so much better that it doesn't make any sense for me to write code anymore with the old way of doing things. That's in a short period of time, that's unsettling.
Yeah. Why is it unsettling? I love it.
I'll tell you why it's unsettling when
Yeah.
I look at it, right? The good part is, of course, it takes much less time to build it. That's a good part. But it's much harder to figure out and debug and figure out where the problem is when it does happen.
Hmm.
And it always changes because something changes somewhere else. I'll
Yeah.
give you an example. We moved in with React, I think not the latest version, 2 versions ago.
Yep.
And the new version, supposedly stable version, when we upgraded it, the entire workflow broke. And now it makes up stuff on the discount codes that are available that are okay to go with.
Hmm.
So you're like, okay, how did this get discounted by 20%? Well, the discount code was created automatically, and then that got moved in, all because we changed to a new React version.
Yeah. That's a
That's
good
kind of
example.
scary for a lot of companies.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I I love change. And I love evolution. So that's how I look at it. But I think, individuals got to they got to, really own their career
Yeah.
and and take, take the initiative to learn more about this stuff. The bigger companies, they are concerned, they are moving slower. Um, there's going to be bumps along the way. When the internet first came out, my phone number was put on, into its homepage. I mean, right? That stuff happens, and as long as you're not, as long as you're protecting your customers' privacy as much as possible, um, I say, lean into it.
Awesome, Scott. This was great to talk to you. Next time I'm up in San Francisco, I'd definitely like to catch up for a coffee and
Sure,
see how things are. But this was great. Thank you for the time, and I'll catch up with you soon.
sounds great. It's great to see you again.